Life after recovery, the long-term health effects of the coronavirus. The acute or short-term sudden symptoms of COVID-19 are the scariest, since they're the ones that kill most patients, and they do so quickly. However, with the case mortality rate of roughly 5%, most of the infected will end up recovering, which brings us to an important question. What is life like for the 95% of patients who pull through? Not enough time has gone by to be sure, but lung collapse, heart failure, and strokes are just some of the potential dangers that make surviving the coronavirus more like surviving the initial explosion in Hiroshima or Nagasaki. We think we got through the worst of it, but the long-term lingering effects may be worse than surviving it in the first place. Join us today as we explore what medical science has to say about the long-term effects of having suffered from COVID-19. You'll be shocked to find that the danger does not stop once you leave the hospital, and not even children are as safe as they were once thought to be. But first, make sure to subscribe to our channel, give us a like, and click on the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming videos. When is someone cured from the coronavirus? If we're going to talk about life after recovery and long-term health effects of coronavirus, the first thing we need to understand is when we can consider ourselves to be actually recovered. It's not just simply saying, "Hey, I feel just fine, I'm cured." Two things have to happen for us to be declared COVID-19 free. Number 1, all major symptoms must be gone. This includes things like fever, abnormal lab results, and abnormal lung imaging, but doesn't necessarily include other symptoms like coughs, weakness, fatigue, and drowsiness. Number 2, we should be free of coronavirus in our respiratory tract. Depending on the country and testing availability, this could mean either 1 or 2 consecutive negative PCR test results for coronavirus in a 24-hour period. Once we get a green light on both, we're free to go home, but that doesn't mean we're out of danger. Turn up the volume on your headphones and keep watching to find out what these potential dangers are. The most common side effects of COVID-19. While more than 80% of patients never develop severe symptoms, the 20% that have to be hospitalized and end up on ventilators face an uncertain future at best. Some patients spend so much time on life support that by the end they need to relearn basic things like eating, swallowing, walking, and talking. And there are more serious matters beyond relearning basic skills. According to different studies, roughly half of all people who developed mild to moderate COVID-19 showed kidney, liver, and lung damage after recovery. Kidney and liver damage is likely the result of heavy medication needed to overcome pneumonia and sepsis, and the overall damage to the lungs has been compared as the equivalent of 15 years of smoking. There are a slew of other serious conditions coming up next. Mental impacts of COVID-19. After barely surviving COVID-19, one of the most frequent problems these recovered patients have to deal with are not physical, they're mental. High levels of stress, anxiety, and fear can have profound effects on our mental state and lead to panic attacks and generalized agoraphobia, the fear of crowds and open spaces. It's kind of like getting PTSD syndrome after a war, and it's a place no one wants to be. The biggest threat of them all, our brain. Recent follow-up studies of coronavirus survivors show that the most common condition after leaving the hospital is the formation of clots in the blood. This is why most patients are prescribed blood thinners for a long time after they overcome the virus. A clot is like a ticking time bomb. It's like a landmine patiently waiting for someone to walk by and explode. They can cause problems anywhere they go, but if they reach the brain and clog an artery there, it's a potentially deadly or disabling stroke on the way. The second biggest threat, heart failure. The fight against the coronavirus puts our immune system in a frenzy, and one of the consequences of this is a persistent inflammation in many tissues, especially in the heart. An inflamed heart can lead to chronic complications and other more dangerous scenarios such as heart failure. A weakened immune system. Data from the previous SARS epidemic helps us to understand and predict what could happen to COVID-19 survivors in the coming years, since they're both caused by the same kind of virus. In the case of SARS survivors, they've shown evidence of a weakened immune system even 12 years after they first caught the disease. How is this discovered? Well, in most cases, survivors tend to get sick much more frequently than the rest of the population, as much as 5 times more frequently in the case of respiratory illnesses. What this shows is that our immune system will not fully function after we recover from coronavirus. It's like running a race car too long without oil. If it does survive the ride, the engine will never be the same. Coronavirus and pregnancy. Some big concerns surround pregnant women when it comes to a pandemic. Several studies on coronavirus-infected mothers have already been done while others are still underway. One of the studies found that coronavirus alters the placenta, reducing blood flow and nutrition to the baby. There were also several reported cases of babies dying in the womb. Based on our experience with the Spanish flu, it is very likely that the babies whose mothers caught COVID-19 during pregnancy could have higher risks for various diseases such as heart disease and more. Having said that, we still need to wait a bit longer for the results of more ambitious studies from more than 1,500 pregnant women, because the first studies were inconclusive. The vulnerability of the unborn child and their mother is something that attracts a lot of attention when it comes to outbreaks like COVID-19. But what about our ability to procreate? Could it be that there's some solid ground for theories that claim this is all the act of a scientist who wants to control world population by reducing fertility around the world? Long-term effects of COVID-19 on our reproductive systems. Researchers haven't found a single shred of evidence to suggest that the coronavirus damages either the male or the female reproductive system in any way. Some earlier studies raised the alarm that they had found coronavirus in the testes of some COVID-19 patients, but sperm count and other fertility tests came back normal. The same goes for women, so if you had the coronavirus, at least you won't have to worry about becoming sterile because of it. Finally, we've all heard that young people are less susceptible to coronavirus, and that most kids who catch it rarely develop the disease at all. However, when it comes to long-term health effects, things aren't as simple as they seem, and some kids develop unlikely illnesses later down the road that send chills down their parents' spines. PIMS, the potential time bomb for children. A new condition coined Pediatric Inflammatory Multisystem Syndrome, or PIMS, was reported in many children weeks after recovering from coronavirus. What's both weird and terrifying is the fact that these children only suffered mild COVID-19 disease and had already fully recovered when, all of a sudden, they started showing inflammation in various organs and blood vessels. The worst complications arise when coronary arteries are involved, which makes PIMS look like Kawasaki disease, a rare condition that can cause sudden death in a quarter of untreated children under 5 years of age. Doctors simply don't know what causes these untimely symptoms, but they hypothesize that it is due to a slow reaction of the immune system that kicks into gear after the battle is won against the virus, doing more harm than good. This wraps up our video about life after recovery and the long-term health effects of the coronavirus. We hope you liked watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. Remember to give us a like and support our work by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell for the latest videos. Thanks for watching.